This is a husband and wife generating $7,500 a month. We're in the state of Ohio. We are 57 years of age. We've got $165,420 of total debt. Cash flow $1,500. Okay. Now, this $7,500, the way it's broken up is $4,000 is husband, and then we have $3,500 is wife. This is a new client. I haven't spoke to wife yet. I hope to. I'm currently working with husband. So of his $4,000, we know that he spends $2,500 a month. That's his cost. I don't know what wife's expenses are, but what I do know is his household has separated their finances. So whatever wife makes, $3,500, she spends whatever. I don't know what her cash flow is. So what I'm going to assume in this case study here, I'm going to assume that her $3,500 all goes to expenses and there's no cash flow. So the only cash flow we actually have is this $1,500 to work with. This is going, when I do things like this and still solve for retirement by their desired age, this opens up a world of opportunity for them. And then I show them how little risk we took just to get there. And then I say, if we can solve that math problem, understand that when you reach this certain age, you are opening your time and attention up to a greater purpose. You're opening yourself up to a greater purpose without taking on unnecessary risk. And if there's ever a risk that I would take, right, here's my gem. I picked this up from my pastor recently. He said this: take risk with God. Take risk with God. Write that down in your notes, because I think that is very, very powerful and impactful to your financial portfolio and also the way you live your life. Like, if you're ever going to take a risk, who would you take it with? Your best friend? Maybe. Your spouse? Sure, no doubt. A random guy on the internet? A random person that cold calls you? I don't know. A random person that seems influential talking about Bitcoin? A very attractive woman, a very attractive man talking about a multi-level marketing company where you can make all these millions of dollars? A guy like me, 29 years old, making videos on YouTube, talking about how awesome real estate is and all these different things, and starting a YouTube channel, creating content. Really process, how did you get to this state of belief that that random man on the internet, I'm putting myself like on the spot here. How did you get to the point where you just blindly trust this random kid on the internet, or this random woman, or this random highly influential person with millions of views and millions of subscribers talking about an opportunity that you yourself could do that they did? And you're willing to risk the farm, so to speak. I heard this said by another YouTuber I highly admire. His name is Sean Cannell. And he says, we don't risk the farm when it comes to opportunities that we're looking at. We'll take risk that might cost us a sheep, might cost us a cow, but we're not going to risk the farm, the real estate, the land. We're not going to go homeless over this. And I think many of us do that unknowingly. Like you didn't even run the numbers. You didn't even evaluate how great of a risk that was to do that thing with that person online, and not realize, oh, you could have did this first, which I'm about to show you. You could have did this and got there. You could have got to the same destination. And then when it comes to taking a risk, you take it with God in an area of your purpose, and you'd have a more fulfilled life. And it didn't cost as much to get there. And when you actually evaluate the amount of money to continue to operate in that purpose, you realize how inexpensive it is. Okay? So, 57 years of age, we're in the state of Ohio, $7,500 of income, $4,000 is husband, $3,500 is wife. I'm going to assume $35,000 and $25,000 are all expenses. So it leaves us with $1,500 of cash flow, $165,000 of debt. We've got a mortgage, we've got a car, and we have a 401k loan. I'll give you the numbers on that. $115,000 2.99%, $1,100 is the payment. Car, $25,420. Interest rate is 4.79%. Monthly payment, $480. 401k loan, $25,000. Payment, $450. I did not get the interest rate. I'm waiting on that from the client. We've got a HELOC, second position, $20,000, 8%. And we have a PLOC, $5,000, 7.5%. The wife, what we know about the wife is she loves what she does. She enjoys what she does, which is very, very good if you're someone that's approaching retirement and you're already in the thing that you love doing. So she volunteers at the ER. She's in EMT. What did I write here? So she's in that space. ER, EMT, health space. EMSG is what I wrote here. I forgot what it meant. And they have one son, grown. 62 is the desired age to retire. Definition of retirement for them, especially husband, is not having to work his full-time job that he's currently at right now. He's like, I just want to be able to walk away from that and then pursue something else. I don't know what that something else is. I don't know what my purpose is in retirement. My goal is to figure that out. So working with me, we're going to figure that out from age 57 to 62. We need to figure out what his purpose is that God called him to. What is God's will over his life? That's purpose, individual purpose. The wife already has fulfillment in the work that she does. She does not want to have to work there to make that $3,500 to then contribute to the household, right? So she wants to simply be in a position where she can volunteer, work a lot of hours, minimal hours, wants that flexibility. But we know that when she reaches 62, active income will still be there, but less. When you reach retirement and you turn on Social Security as early as 62, there is a minimum amount of hours that you can work per week. So what is the maximum amount of hours you can work with Social Security benefits? Let me see. I think it's earning limits, not necessarily hours, if I'm not mistaken. If you work more than 45 hours a month in your business, let's see, self-employment. If in 2025, if you are younger than full retirement age, there's an annual earnings limit of $23,400. Let me use that number for wife, $23,400. And we divide that by 12, $1,950. So I'll round down. Let's take 3,500 divided by 2 is 1,750. So I'll go even lower, and I'll say wife continues to make $1,500 active in retirement. That's one number. We need to solve 3,500. This is overestimated. We need to solve for 6,000 income. We need to solve for that number. Now, you can solve that number with trying to invest to create passive income by taking on greater risk than normal, or you can learn a little bit about different financial products that will literally remove risks by guaranteeing income. There's only 3 products in the United States that provide the word guarantee: Social Security, pension plans, and annuities. Okay? Wife gets a pension called OPERS. That's in the state of Ohio. Husband and wife, we looked at the numbers. We would get $1,724 if husband turns on his Social Security benefits. Wife will get $1,410. Wife also gets this OPERS retirement in the state of Ohio, $421. So if we just look at what the government, United States, provides for this family when they retire at 62, this is how much the gap fills. So they fill so far $3,555. Let me make sure I wrote that number down correctly. Verify my math. 1724, 1410, 421, yet. Those are just 3 retirement vehicles that provide guaranteed lifetime income. That's very important. No passive investment can say that, can provide that guarantee, right? Now, what's our problem? We've got $2,445 left to fill in our gap. $2,445. The last vehicle that this family can use are annuities. We have terms of what they've been able to create so far. I'm going to write that again over. I'll use active income. I'll put wife, I'll put 1,500. So that 2,445 with active income, it reduces the gap by 945. We're not going to count it for right now. We want to see how close we can close this $6,000 gap to create guaranteed income in their life, which then frees up time that they were previously dedicating to their job that they can now dedicate to a greater purpose without taking on massive risk to simply get to where they want to get to. The husband has about $35K in retirement accounts where they're inactive, not contributing any money, has no idea the rate of return of these things, have no idea the fees behind them, not paying attention to them. He's like, I don't know what to do with these things. I said, well, let's repurpose those dollars to create more guaranteed income. And let's see what that can produce. Then wife has a $150,000 plus 401k. And I haven't gotten the actual numbers yet back. I'm working on it. But I used an assumption. I said, well, the typical American portfolio, average American portfolio of a standard W-2 employee typically has a 60-40 split design. They got 60% of their money going to stocks, 40% are in bonds or fixed assets where they're getting fixed rates of return. So if I use that same number, that's about 60,000 of the 150 is probably held up in bonds, treasuries, cash, fixed assets. Where you're getting a fixed rate of return for a period of time. And that reduces this word right here, risk, to get to an end game, to get to a desired number of money that they can use for what? Passive income in retirement. So now I rounded the number down and I used 50,000 wife annuity and a 35,000 husband annuity. So 2 annuities, deferred income annuities, and the job of the annuity is to simply provide guaranteed income at a certain age. We're trying to maximize what that could be. So if husband rolled over these inactive retirement accounts into an annuity and had that money grow, tax deferred, and then turned on income at 62, that 35,000 will provide him guaranteed. This is what's cool. So I can say, here you go, Mr. Client. I can guarantee you this number for the rest of your life. So that number was $3,603 a year. Divide that by 12. So that's $300 monthly. And then wife, for just 50K, we can guarantee $5,146 for life. That's $426.83 a month. So what did that fill the gap by? So now we got $727.08 of income guaranteed at 62 for the rest of their life. So we're going to put that number here, $727.08. The initial deposit was 50K and 35K, so that's a total of 85 grand. If you do 5,146 plus 3,603, that's 8,749 a year, every single year for the rest of their life. From 62 to 82, that's 175 grand. That's only if they live for 20 more years. Chances are this couple has longevity in their family and they live all the way to 95 years old, let's say. So that's say 33 years. Say they live for a healthy 33 more years, getting 8,749 for the rest of their life for initially depositing 85K. That's $288,000. So their initial principal is gone. They spent all of it plus, right? So 288, so minus 85 grand. They took 85 grand, principal dollars today at 57, 62, they turn on the asset, the income, and if they live all the way to 95, they spent all their money of that 85K. They spent it all. But then they were also able to spend another $203,000 for the rest of their life. Now, granted, some of that's taxes, obviously, but how powerful is that? And we just remove the risk. I think that, to me, this blows my mind as a finance geek, someone that's interested in this stuff, where it's like, oh, wow, look at that. The average American doesn't have to take the risk of an entrepreneur has to take to achieve a similar result, which is essentially financial independence, financial freedom. What we're solving for right now is financial independence, being able to have enough money come in to cover your cost of living, which means you now redirect time, that 40 hours that you were, 40, 50 hours you were giving to a company. And then you can say, you know what, I'm gonna take risk and start my own business with God, because that's what he's telling me to go do. And I'm gonna go build the business because now I have the time to go do that. And I don't have to take from here to go feed this. I can just build it organically from the ground up. Or I can go full-time ministry, work hand in hand with a church, and maybe they pay me $25,000 a year. Maybe they pay me 30 grand a year. And that's my active way of staying social and engaged. And when you do things like that, that actually promotes longevity in your life. So you actually live longer. If you live longer and you've got guaranteed income products, you're guaranteeing yourself more money for the rest of your life. Like that kind of stuff blows my mind. So look what we did so far. We've got 1724 Social Security, 1410, 421 from the OPERS, 727. Now we're at 4,000 total, 282. Did we solve it? No, still not there yet. We have a $1,700 gap to fill. When you're approaching retirement, when you're planning for your retirement, there's only two things that you can do to get to this number. Either increase income or reduce debt obligation. This husband and this wife, they already work full-time. So if I present them with, go start a YouTube channel, let's start taking our cash flow and investing in Bitcoin. So that means, so anything that I tell them is going to involve this word, right? Taking on greater than normal risk to achieve a particular result. Where I can say, what would it look like if you paid off your debt? Let's take a look here. What would it look like if we became debt-free? If you became debt-free by 62, 5 years from now, pay off all your debt, or I show you a way to remove debt obligations in your life, then that is equal to increasing income. Because if I reduce debt obligation, that's a dollar for dollar reduction in what I need to live. So now I don't need 6,000, because of that 6,000, what am I carrying? I'm carrying $1,100 mortgage, a $480 card payment, a $450 car loan. So let's do that. 450 plus 480 plus 1,100. So it's $2,030. Working with a client, I said, I can just doing velocity, not even doing velocity banking actually, because velocity banking actually is not going to make sense with the debts that they currently have. So I said, look, just snowball, extra payments. Right now they're paying off their HELOC. It'll take them a couple months to knock that out. Once they do, we're going to tackle this car first. The amount of interest that they pay to their 401k, the interest goes back to them. So I say, leave that 450 alone. Let's tackle the car. Let's get rid of that to get our 480. How long is it going to take? 25,420 divided by 1980. So it'll take you, round up, 14 months. It takes you 14 months to pay off the car. So in our 5-year journey, we lost a year and some months. We've got about 4 years left. In that timeline, $115, $1,100, you're still paying $1,100 of those 14 months. Not even going to count that. I'm just going to add the 1980 number plus the 1,100, 3,080. I'm going to round down, call it 3,000. 115 divided by 3,000 bucks. 38.33 months, which is pretty accurate because I did not count 14 months of $1,100 payments. So 38 is pretty accurate. That we'll say that was interest, but it's only a 2.99 rate. So I said, check this out. 38.33 plus 14, 52.33 divided by 12, 4.36. I said, let's be super conservative and say it takes you 5 years to get debt free. No velocity banking needed, just extra payments. If that's all you did from 57 to 62. Mind you, the wife is contributing to her 401k. Husband also has a new 401k and he's contributing 6% to that. So that's above what they take home, right? So they take home the 75, and before they take home that money, they're contributing dollars to their 401k plans. Not even going to include that. In 5 years or less, they can be debt free. I remove 2030. What was our number? 6,000 minus 4,282.08 is 1717. So now we do minus 2030. That's a plus $312. So remove, this is the other piece of being able to retire without taking on risk, is you simply remove risk. Debt is a risk in retirement. So remove debt obligations of 2030. Now, to me, I just solved conservatively where I can guarantee that they no longer need 6,000 of income. They only technically need minus 2,000. They only need 3,970, right? Because I assumed 3,500 and 2,500. I assumed from the start, wife was spending all her money, which I know she's not. I asked him, I said, does she spend all her money? He's like, no, she does have some cash flow. He's going to work on getting those numbers for me. So I'm assuming she spends all her money. That accounts for inflation over the next 5 years. 3,500 and 2,500 is 6,000. They technically only need, if we pay off all their debt by age 62, do this annuity, have the OPRs, have the Social Security for both turn on at age 62, they can retire comfortably. Isn't that awesome? They retire with a plus $300 of cash flow, and we created guaranteed income of $3,555, right? So we got a guaranteed income, $3,555. Watch this. Let's say their expenses are $4,000, which is highly not going to be the case. Let's say it is $4,000. So round up. So that would mean, well, even though I removed debt obligation, I still have $4,000 of expenses, let's just say. So then we're not finished then, right? Because I only have, no, actually I'm wrong. Let me run that back. 727.08 plus 421 plus 1410 plus 1724. Yeah, okay, never mind. I won. So I want to make it worse just to like create more room for error. So right now I created, in this case, guaranteed folks, we created 4,282.08 of income with an expense of 4,000. But let's say their expenses are 6,000, right? Let's just make it worse. So are we there yet? No. Even though we became debt free, let's say I removed 2,030 of expenses, and then when we designed their lifestyle, and that includes more traveling and vacations, we tack on that 2,030. So now we're back up to 6. Okay, how do we fix that? Well, if I took 5 years just paying off all my debt, what do we have? We have this mortgage where at 62 years old, they can do something called a HECM. They can turn their property into tax-free income. That's one option that they can look into. And that would fill the gap of the 2,000 bucks, right? So 6,000 minus 4,282. Oh wait, there's a $1,700 gap there. So that alone could fill it, the HECM. Let's not use it though. Let's say they don't want to do that. Okay, well, let's look at their 401k. I'm just going to look at wives, not even going to look at husbands. We took, say, 50,000 out of the 401k and we threw it into the annuity, right? So now we only have 100 grand left, right? So only $100,000 left. Let's look at a compound interest calculator together. map out the numbers. We'll use like very conservative numbers of their 401k performance over the next 5 years and see what potential income their 401k could create. What I would encourage this client to consider and talk to a financial advisor about it, especially with the wife, and say, look, you have, now that we rolled over 50 grand into another deferred annuity, right? We got this 100 grand left. What if we started rolling that money into a Roth IRA where the money can grow tax-free now, so that we reduce tax liability later on? Instead of continuing to defer this money out, why don't we take the next 5 years and get tax-free growth, so all of the growth is all yours when you reach that certain point? That would be a tweak that I would make there. I would have the client consider. So let's do this. 100,000, 5 years of growth, very safe, 6% growth. And I know she's contributing to her 401k. Let me see how much, if I got it in my notes. I know he's contributing 6%, and I'll very conservatively match hers number. So if she's bringing in 30, I'll use her net take-home number, 42,000, and I'll times it by, I'll go 1% lower, say 5%, 2,100, say $175 a month, which I know she's doing more than that, to her 401k. So I'll do 175 monthly contributions, and oh wait, no, that's annual, and then contribution frequency is monthly. Yep. So her money would have grown over the next 5 years to about 145,000. At which point, if we retire at 62 and we have a $1,700 gap, let's say that 145k was all rolled over into a Roth IRA over the next few years. All that money got rolled over into a Roth IRA. So now there's 145,000 of tax-free income that she has. What we could do here, I'm gonna run the math on this. This is just an idea. Let's say we took half the money, 72,500, and did another annuity deferred at 62 for wife. If 50 grand, 5 years of growth gets me 5,146, 72,500 at an older age. The thing with annuities is the older you get, the bigger the distribution rate becomes because you're closer to mortality. So the growth of 72,500, let's say, is the same, but the distribution rate would be larger. Let's just say her 72,500 inside of an annuity grew at 4.5% for maybe 5 years. And then at 72,500, what was my gap again? 6,000 minus 4,000, 28208, 1717. We'll round up, call it 1,800. 72,500 divided by 1,800 is 40 months. Let's say she did withdrawals. Mind you, that's also no growth in the Roth IRA. No growth. Imagine you got 72,500 at 62 years old in your Roth IRA, and we're gonna do monthly tax-free withdrawals of 1,800 a month. That fills our gap of the 6,000. In that example, we won, but is it a permanent win? We'll see. We got 40 months, so that's 3.3 years of distributions. This assumes, guys, that wife's not working and husband's not working. So no active income. We already know that with active income, just wife alone, 1,500, the gap is filled, which would mean that we don't have to do withdrawals, which I would encourage when I'm working with a client. I'm like, if you're making active income, let your active income fill that gap. Let your investments continue to defer, continue to build and compound. No need to withdraw. But again, we're using no active income as another parameter of safety measure for her portfolio, their portfolio, to have success. So we got 3.3 years of withdrawals, that we're going to drain that 72.5, and we allowed the 72,500 in the annuity to defer for 3.3 years. Let's see potentially what that could have done. So 72,500, let's do a 4.5%. There's no contributions to an annuity. That money goes to 90,348. At 90,348, let's assume a 6.5%. I'll go lower. Let's do a 6% distribution rate. That would be 5,420 in that annuity. This is super conservative. I know the number would be higher and the performance of the annuity would likely be higher. So 5,420 divided by 12, that's another 451.74 of guaranteed income for life that annuity would create them. Now, real quick, what I'm gonna do to help my number here that I put on that second annuity, I have another client that actually did an annuity for, I believe it was 75,000. And so I want to see what see if I can find it real quick, see what their statement looks like, because it's actually really cool. Because they did an annuity for about 70 or 75K, but at an older age. Let's see what their guaranteed payout. I don't want to share my screen because that'll show their name, so I want to keep that private. 1 second, I'm reading. So they're at like 10,000 a year guaranteed income. Yeah, okay. So then it's safe to say that this number could be more like in the 7K range. It's about maybe 583. And if that's the case, they're 65, 66 years old. So that would be 583. How much did it close the gap by? I'll go in the middle, I'll say $500. Still a $1,300 gap. What happens to your Social Security and the OPRs? Do those increase? Yes, they do, right? Social Security income increases by a little bit year over year. So that'll close the gap a little bit. So they're at a $1,300 gap at this point, and they're 65-ish years old. I didn't include the husband's 401k retirement, but that would be another vehicle that we would tap into to buy more time, to maybe allow this annuity to defer a little bit longer to create more income. There's also this, the HECM, which maybe they weren't interested then, but if I can show them, hey, in this scenario, we can guarantee ourselves, $1,300 a month, pulling the equity out of your home, and you don't plan on leaving that home can become your retirement home, if you like, and it can produce income for you tax-free with a HECM. HECM is a home equity conversion mortgage. It's basically a HELOC in reverse. So the money you pull out of it, you don't have to pay back. So you're not obligated to make any payments back, and you remain the owner of the property fully. It's an insurance product. HECM is an insurance product, a guaranteed product. And on the back end, the value of your property is appreciating at a certain amount versus the amount of income you're drawing from over time. So there's a lot of really cool things that you can do with a HECM in retirement that would, again, allow them to pull money from here to allow their investments to continue to compound. But we can easily say here, well, way before even doing that, if we can figure out what their purpose is and they're actively engaged in that in retirement, wife's bringing in, let's say, $1,500 because she loves what she does as an EMT, working in the ER, and the husband figures out what he wants to do and say he's making $1,000. We're there. So now they've got $1,500 plus $1,000, say $2,500 of active income that closes the potential gap of having $6,000 a month in expenses, and that would still leave them with positive cash flow that they could put where? Where could they put that? In their Roth, they could put it. They could simply save it in a CD and store it in savings, have that money compound, purchase another annuity, right? For me, if it was me, I would have that money invested in my Roth and if I had life insurance in there, or if I have a brokerage account, I'd invest it in there and just have the money compound because I don't need it. So this is an example of solving for retirement based on numbers, lifestyle, and purpose. No outside influence. This person didn't have to start a YouTube channel if they didn't want to. They didn't have to do Amazon, e-commerce stores. They didn't have to buy real estate, take on massive risk and debt. They didn't have to do any of that. They just strategically knew what their numbers were. We solved for guaranteed income vehicles, stretched our dollars, removed risk, focused on what God is calling them to. Maybe husband is being called to ministry, wife's being called into the hospital to stay right there. They've got all this extra time. They're working part-time. They're able to take vacations. They're completely debt-free. So that means it opens up their credit. They can access, more capital if they need for emergencies and stay fully cash flow positive. And with that, we're all done. We're all done for today. I hope that was very valuable. And I wish you all a great rest of your day.